Well, hello and welcome to all of our campuses, those watching online, on our YouTube channel throughout the week, or those watching on social media or podcasters, whatever. Those watching at our Jackson, Michigan location and those watching here in Ann Arbor. We're one church that meets across multiple locations, and soon, very soon this spring, coming to Chelsea, Michigan. I'm so excited. Hey, what I love to do at the beginning of the service is I love to welcome our church family. So come on, across all those spaces, let me hear it now. Come on, let's welcome our church family this morning. Who's glad to be at church today? I love it. I love it. Hey, my name is Jason Tucker, and I'm one of the pastors at North Rock. That's very excited that you have chosen to join us in the final week of a series that we're calling, What Do You Do When You Don't Know What to Do? If you're visiting today, whether that's online or at one of our physical locations, I would love for you to take a second, fill out the Connect card, let us know that you're here. I promise we're not going to bug you, but we do want to connect with you relationally because we believe in connection at this church, and if there's anything we can do to help, serve, or any way we can pray for you, we would love the opportunity to do just that. So all you have to do if you're online is go to our website, northrock.tv, click Connect card, or even if you're at our physical location, you can fill out a Connect card online. There's a box right on the main page that says Connect card, or if you're at one of our physical locations, there's a card that you'll find in front of you as well. You can drop it off in one of the silver boxes on your way out, or hand it to somebody with a lanyard. All right, so let's jump into this. We're closing out a series that we called What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. And obviously in life, we've been saying this every week, that there are choices that you face sometimes that are beyond just the easy or, I guess, rational way of thinking. There are things that require more than just, hey, this is a moral choice, or hey, this is I can make this choice based on my education or my smarts, my street smarts. I can make these choices. What about the choices that are a little bit more difficult? Now, if you've missed any week of this series, I want to encourage you to go back on our YouTube page and watch. There are 3 weeks leading up to this week that are very big building blocks to what I'm going to talk to you about today. So if you're just attending for the very first time, you can go to our YouTube page, just search North Rock Church on YouTube. We're the one with the blue and the logo. But if I was going to give it to you in a nutshell, I'll tell you it's just this. We said there's tension with these decisions because everybody wants to be good at life. We all would love to kind of have life by the tail, frankly. And, when we're facing decisions that we really don't know what to do, sometimes it feels like life is going in the opposite direction that we want it to go. Or we're frozen and we can't really move forward with our lives. Now, when I think about choices like, should we stay together or should we separate? Or should we have kids or should we not? Should we adopt or should we not? Should I take this job that's going to require me to move out of state when my family's really loving it where we are right now? Or, hey, take this job that's going to require a lot of travel, and I've got a job now where I'm making a little bit less money, but I don't have to travel as much. What do you do in those kind of situations? What about when your parents are aging and you have to figure out, make some difficult choices about their health and well-being and safety in the future? What do you do in the times in life when you're faced with things that you just don't know what to do? Everybody wants to be good at life. But what we find out about life is that morality, smarts, and even the success that we try to build our lives around, they're just not enough sometimes. And that's what we've been really digging into every week is we say, hey, in order to be good at life, you need wisdom. Wisdom is being good at life. Wisdom is this fabric that God created, I believe, in the existence of, or in the experience of the human existence, that has been woven into the fabric of what makes this whole thing called life come together. And according to the Bible, everybody can experience wisdom, regardless if they believe in God or not. Wisdom is something that is available to or observable to everybody, but make no mistake about it, wisdom is the fingerprint of God on humanity. And that's what we've been saying every single week, there's a lot of people out there talking about being wise. Frankly, we live in a world today that is full of things, whether it's the self-help industry or politics, everybody. Like, we live in a world where we've got a lot of people walking around saying they've got the answers, they've got the wisdom that would make you and I good at life. But what we talked about last week is really God gave us a filter for wisdom. How do you and I know? Well, wisdom, it has to pass a sniff test, right? James, the brother of Jesus, said, if you're going to call it wise and you're going to say it's from heaven, you're going to say God is saying this is wise, or this is the wisdom that God wrapped the world in today, it's got to be able to pass through this filter. It's got to be pure, peace-loving. It's got to be considerate, submissive, full of mercy, impartial, and sincere. If it's not any of these things, if any one of these things is missing from what you and I are calling wisdom, well, we talked about it last week. James said that's not really true wisdom. And we got to be careful about buying into counterfeit versions of wisdom. And that's what brings us to this week. Each week, we've been talking about a theme. And today, man, if I was going to say, closing out this series, obviously we could continue this series on for many months and really covering this topic of wisdom. But I think today I want to talk to you about something. Solomon takes this discussion on wisdom a little bit further, where later on in the book of Ecclesiastes, he begins to ask questions that aren't just about wisdom, because I talked about in the first week, Solomon was the wisest king of Israel, known for and revered for his wisdom. People came from all over just to sit at his feet and listen. And it was all because when God asked him, what do you need? What do you want? He said, give me wisdom. And God gave him just that. 2 out of the 3 wisdom books in the Bible, Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, were both penned by King Solomon of Israel. Job is the 3rd book in the addition to that. But today I really want to dig more into the book of Ecclesiastes, because over the last 3 weeks, we've been looking at Proverbs, but Solomon gets older. He begins to age, and he starts to make some other observations about life. In particular, what I want to talk about today is this. At the beginning in Proverbs, he was kind of asking, what is wise? What is wisdom? What does wisdom look like? But later on in his life, he makes another observation. He says, hey, there's a timing element to this too. Timing is important. He said, he starts to really ask the question or consider, when is wise? You see, because frankly, you and I are faced with decisions all the time that we can be doing our best to make the right decision. But unfortunately, it's complicated. The timing of it all makes it very, very complicated. And so we have to consider the timing of the decision and not just the decision itself. It's a lot like when you take a selfie, right? There's like this perfect time to snap the picture when you got a group of people together and you're trying to get them all to smile at the same time. There's this perfect timing that exists that even if you count to 3, for whatever reason, it's just sometimes a little bit difficult to get right. I saw this commercial and it kind of made me laugh, and it went along with what we're talking about. We're going to talk about today. Check this out.
All right, come on, girls, get together. 3, 2, 1. Oh, I wasn't ready.
Let me try again. Ready? Go, go, go. Sorry, bro. Think of all we had before.
Oh, let's get a group photo.
Let me
Ready?
try once more. Oh, you're not getting that. We can have it all. You and I again.
1, 2, 3, cheese.
Let me try again.
I love it. Come on now. You know you've taken that picture where you're like, ooh, you got to like retake it 3 times. Timing is important, everybody. When you're taking a snapshot of your life, when you're taking a snapshot of the decisions that you have to make, or whether you're taking a selfie on your cell phone, everybody, you've got to consider timing. Good timing is really, really important when it comes down to your decisions. And Solomon really digs into that later on in his life. The book of Ecclesiastes, he had been the king of Israel for some time and experienced life a little bit longer. He had lived longer, and he kind of took a little bit more of a skeptic's perspective. He said, hey, wisdom and decision making, there's more to it. Like, I've got to decide what's wise. That's really important. But I've also got to get this timing part right. I got to consider the timing of these decisions. Watch as it unfolds in Scripture. Ecclesiastes 3, 1 through 8. You've probably heard this in some capacity. There's a time for everything, Solomon says, and a season for every activity under the sun. There's a time and a season for every activity under the sun. Now, depending on if you're a music lover or not, or if you were born, somewhere before 1970, probably, you've heard that there's a famous song out there that really, it speaks for this. God has a timetable for everything that happens. God has a timetable, Solomon is saying, for everything that happens. It was the Byrds that wrote that song, right? And we used to give them credit before we knew that Solomon said it first. We find that out a lot about life, everybody. But Turn, Turn, Turn was written by the Byrds, and we think, well, man, this was, in every season, turn, turn. I'm playing my air guitar for you this morning, right? A time to laugh, a time to cry. Sorry. But we've heard this song. It's been famous, obviously, in movies. It was a hit song in its time. But interestingly enough, it was Solomon that said this. Solomon is the one that wrote this and penned this. He observed there's a time to be born and a time to die. There's a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal. There's a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. And if that doesn't somehow take you back to that scene in Footloose when Ren McCormick is like standing in front of the community. Yes. Now I want to be clear. I'm not talking about the new Footloose, the 2011 version with the Sweet Life of Zack and Cody guy and the Dancing with the Stars lady. No. I'm talking about the original. Come on, somebody. The original Footloose. Kevin Bacon. Come on, you're with me. Like Ren McCormick, he gets up. And the whole idea is he opens that Bible and stands before the community. He says, and he literally repeated those words of Solomon. Hey, there's a time for everything, every activity under the sun. There's even a time to dance. All right, I'll save you that. All right. So look, Solomon goes on to say, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. There's a time to search, a time to give up, a time to keep, a time to throw away, a time to tear, a time to mend, a time to be silent, and a time to speak, a time to love, a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace. Solomon makes an observation that timing is everything. It's a big stinking deal, and we need to think about timing when it comes down to our decisions. Timing plays a big part in the decisions that we make. We have to ask, what is wise? But we also have to ask, when is wise? What is wise is important, but when is wise is important too, because Solomon finishes that thought off in Ecclesiastes 3:11 by saying this: God has given us, he's given every single one of us the desire to, look at this, know the future. You ever had a decision and you just wish that you could know what would happen if you made it? You could know the outcome? Where do you think that desire came from? Solomon says that desire came from God. That for whatever reason, that thing that's built into us, that we want to know, hey, if I make this choice, what's going to happen after it? That desire to know the future, God is what put it, who put it in us. God put that desire in us. He does everything just right and say those two words with me right there on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. On time. God does everything just right and on time. But people can never completely understand what God is doing. I don't know if you've ever felt that way in your life, but I know for me, there's been many times that I've come to the realization that God does not tell me the details in advance. And I think, well, man, it would just be so much easier if I knew if I make this decision, what will happen next. Timing is everything. When I make the decision is important. What I call wise is important. But really, if I knew the outcome, it would be so much easier. But see, the problem with that thinking is, and we're going to talk more about that as this message unfolds, is that God knows much better than us that if we knew what would happen based on our decisions, unfortunately, we would probably manipulate the system. It would alter how we make decisions. It would alter our need for a personal relationship with God on a daily basis, on a consistent basis, to learn how he works. And that's why Solomon said, people, listen, even if God did give you the outcome, you'd never completely understand it. You'd never completely get it. So even though you see the importance of timing, God does not give you those details. And then he goes on to say in Ecclesiastes 8:6, for there's a time and a way. Say that with me. There is a time and a way. One more time. There is a time and a way for everything. Wait a minute. What about the current financial situation I find myself in? Like, we're in a mess. Right, there's a time and a way for everything. Like, God is orchestrated a perfect time and a way for every decision in your life. Getting out of what you've gotten yourself into. Maybe your marriage is struggling. There's a time and a way. Maybe you're deciding what to do in the future for your job, or whether to take that job in another city, or whether to have kids. Well, hey, there's a time and a way. There is a time and a way for everything. Although, Solomon observes, man's troubles, they lie heavy on him. People's troubles lie heavy on them. In other words, God is perfectly orchestrating things in the time that they need to be orchestrated in. And that's a big idea for us. And he doesn't give us the details of how that's all working out. But Solomon observes God in every situation there is a time and there is a way, but our troubles are weighing heavy on us. Our troubles are just alone, our troubles are going to make it hard for us to see that. I tried to write it out so we could really get this in context. You can make a decision in the wrong time. You can make the right decision. You can go the right way in the wrong time, and that's a wrong decision. Like, timing is important. What Solomon is saying is there's a right time and a right way for every decision that you and I make in our lives. There's a right time and a right way for every decision that we make. Let me show it to you in scripture. Don't tell me the Bible's not funny. I love this. A loud and cheerful greeting early in the morning will be taken as a curse. Come on, somebody, right? A loud and cheerful greeting. If you run into my bedroom in the morning, kids, right? Come on, this every time I read this scripture, I can't help it. I love all my kids, but my daughter Macy is a morning person. Everybody, like, and I love morning people. Like, I can be a morning person after about 2 cups of coffee, right? I need a cup of coffee, but Macy does not need a cup of coffee, and she's been doing this for a long time since she was young. As she's gotten older, like in the morning when I'm trying to drink my coffee, I'm trying to wake up. Macy's got a lot of words. Like, she can bring it in the morning. And she, I've been working with her, trying to help her understand. Mace, you got to give Dad a minute. Like, Dad needs at least 1, if not 2, cup of coffees. Why? Because we got to ask ourselves, like, let's think about this. There's a time and a way for every decision under the sun. So here's the question I want to dig into today. How do we get the timing right? For the decisions in our lives, how do we get the timing of these choices correct? Not just what is wise, but when is wise. How do I, like, if God has a time and a way for every situation, if he sees my life and your life exactly where we are, and he knows that we're facing choices, but we have no idea what to do. How do we get this right? How do we find out what is wise? And how do we find out when is wise? Because timing is so important. Well, I'll show you this passage. I think this is probably, in a nutshell, one of the most powerful passages that I, in my own personal life, have had to lean into. And I think it's one that you've probably heard before, but today I want to try to maybe give it to you from a little different perspective. Solomon said in Proverbs, before things got complicated, when he was just, Proverbs just being that, that wise look at life. And here's what he said. He said, trust in the Lord with all of your heart and do not lean on your understanding. Why? Because God doesn't give you the details. God has a perfect timetable for everything, but God doesn't give you the details. So if you're walking through life leaning on your own understanding, that's going to affect your trust in God. Trust in God with all your heart. This is Solomon. Do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge. In everything that you do, acknowledge. Acknowledge who? God. Acknowledge him. And what will God do? God will make straight your paths. God will make the path before you straight. So what Solomon really said, and obviously through Ecclesiastes, as he's kind of looking at this, and he's looking at the complication of life, and he's looking at it maybe from a different perspective. It's interesting to see that Solomon, the advice that he gave us when it comes down to going through things that we have no idea what to do, that trust is a very important piece of this. And I automatically think of the trust fall. Like Solomon is saying, if you're going to get the wisdom right, if you're going to ask what is wise, and you're going to get the answer to when is wise, it's only God that has the timing and the way figured out. Don't lean on your own understanding. Only God has the time and the way figured out. So what you're going to have to do, your part in this and my part in this, is simply the trust fall. Now, the trust fall is like, if you go and you search trust fall on the internet, here's the problem with the trust fall. You're going to see not all the successful trust falls that have taken place. No, because frankly, that's not worth putting on YouTube, everybody. You're going to see all the failed trust falls, and that's what scares us to death about wisdom. What scares us to death about knowing what to do and when to do it is understanding that we don't know the time. We don't understand how God works. He doesn't give us the details. But what God is asking us to do is this. And automatically in our head, we think, how do I know he's going to catch me? Like, how do I know this is not going to happen? Like, I couldn't help myself. I saw this video this week, and I don't know about you, but I die laughing on people falling. I'm sorry. How do I know that is not going to happen to me? Really, God, that's what you want me to do? You want to create the kind of relationship with me, and you want me to have the kind of relationship with you where I've got wisdom to know what to do. So you give me wisdom to decide. But in order to get the timing right and chase after that wisdom, to know what is wise and when is wise, I really have to give myself over to this idea of trusting you. Just trusting my decisions to you. Trusting these choices to you. Now, I'm going to be the skeptic for a second and say, okay, well, if that's the case, if this is what I'm really being asked to do by God, is just fall into this trust relationship with him, because he's the one who knows the time. He's the one that knows the way. what are the ingredients of trust then? How do I do that? What does that look like? Do I just walk through my life going, hey, God, I guess, you'll figure this out. And I don't really have any part in this. That's not what I believe it is to trust God. Listen, I think it's very clear right in the writings of Solomon when he says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Okay, how? Lean not on your own understanding. I think the first ingredient to trust is just that. We've got to understand what we don't understand. If we're going to not lean on our own understanding, I've got to understand what I don't understand. Okay, if I'm not going to lean on my understanding, if that's the first part of trust, what don't I understand? What don't I get that God does get? What am I missing? What is the missing ingredient? And I'll show it to you in Scripture. Solomon says in Ecclesiastes 3:14, he says, I know that everything God does will last forever. God is eternal, first off. Solomon's saying, listen, you are not eternal as a human being. I am not eternal. We are not eternal beings in this form that we live right now, but there is a part of us that God has placed in all of us that is eternal, everybody. There's a part of you that Solomon says God placed eternity in the heart of every human being. There's a part of you and I that's going to live eternally somewhere. That's a scary thought. That's a big thought to consider when you really think about your life. And Solomon says, listen, you got to understand what you don't understand. God, everything God does will last forever. It's eternal. And if you're only seeing things in your life, and I'm only seeing things in my life, through what happens while this body exists, which is not eternal. This right here is not eternal. This is a shell that is dying. This is a shell that is going to come to an end. And we've experienced that and observed that. And remember, Solomon did too. As he got older, as he began to see things and look at life through a different lens, he began to see that, man, everything God does lasts forever. The things I do, they don't last forever. Unless I'm doing them for God. Unless I'm doing things that are echoing into eternity. The things that God wants me to do. And that's why God knows the time and the way. And so everything God does will last forever. There is no adding to it. I have no wisdom that I can add to what God already knows. There is no adding to it, and there is no taking away from it. I can't take away from God's wisdom either. God works, this is key, so that people will be in awe of him. I've got to understand, if I'm going to trust God, I've got to understand the ingredients of trust. First ingredient, understand what I don't understand. I got to understand there are some things that are bigger than what I'm going to be able to understand on my own. I've got to understand that there's no adding to it and no taking away from it. I can have an opinion on it, but my opinion doesn't matter. All that matters is God works in a way so that I and you will live in and recognize being in awe of him. He's the one that has the time and the way for every situation under the sun. It makes me think of the difference between a waiting room and a drive-through, right? You know, like this is the expanse that we live in when it comes down to our decisions. For some of you today, you're in the waiting room. And being in God's waiting room is, man, there's a lot that goes along with that. Like it's hard to understand why you're trying to figure out the right thing, but you can't figure out the right thing, or you can't figure out the right timing. And it's like being in a waiting room where you just feel like, oh my gosh, I'm just waiting and I don't really know. When's this going to change? What's going to happen different about this? Like, how will I know what to do? And you're kind of waiting on God. Hey, God, I need your help on this. And you're wondering if God is even hearing you. It's like being at the doctor's office in a waiting room, right? On the other hand, sometimes you feel like it's the drive-through. Like, hey, we're moving through. Like, hey, sometimes God has already told you and I what to do and when to do it. And we're wanting to exist in this waiting room experience. And God's like, hey, I already told you. Like, let's go. Pull up and here you go. Let's get going. Let me get you on your way quick, right? here's what you and I don't understand about God. What don't I understand about God? Simply this. God is never early, God is never late, and God is always on time. Say that with me. God is never early. God is never late. God is always on time. This is what I don't understand. This is what I can't make sense of. And the timing of it all, frankly, it's just hard to understand for us. So this is why God is saying, I need you to trust me. And the first part of trusting me is this. There are times you make decisions and you're early. There are times you make decisions and you're late. And if we're being honest, there's probably a lot of decisions in our life that are not on time. We need God for this part of our lives, to walk in wisdom, to know the timing. We need God to order our steps on a daily basis. Look here, it is in scripture again. 2 Peter 3 verse 8. But do not forget this one thing. Peter's telling us, dear friends, my closest friends, I love you. Don't forget this. With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. God's version of time is not the same as your version or my version of time. God is timeless. He's eternal. He transcends time. So the only way that you and I are going to learn to trust God is to understand the first ingredient is simply that I've got to understand what I don't understand. I don't want my timing. I don't want to make this decision in my way. I want to make this decision in God's way, everybody, because God's way is perfect and my way is late. My way is early. My way is often not on time. First ingredient. Second ingredient, I've got to choose wise over right in my life in every way. What did Solomon say? Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Here's how. Don't lean on your own understanding, but in everything you do, acknowledge God. Acknowledge Him. Acknowledge Him. Choose wise over right in every way. Jason, what are you trying to say? We need to acknowledge God in this way. Oftentimes in our life, we're asking the question, or when we're making decisions, we're asking the question, well, is it wrong for me to do this? Like, is it wrong that I, go out and with my friends and I have a couple beers before I get behind the wheel? I mean, is that wrong? Well, like, why is it that we're always looking for the gray areas in life? Is it wrong that I'm, is it wrong that I'm making the decision to eat this thing, this extra dessert? Is it wrong that it's not wrong that I'm having dessert? Is it wrong that I'm just connecting with an old high school friend when I'm married? And I'm just talking on Facebook, just sharing messages back and forth. Like, is it wrong to do that? I think the part that we're missing here is in doing that and walking through life that way and making decisions that way. The problem is, are we really acknowledging God in everything that we do? Because trusting God is what? First off, understanding what I don't understand. Second, it's I've got to choose wise over right. And what that really means is this. Just because it's not wrong doesn't mean it is wise. I'm going to say that again because that's good. I need that. And I know there's probably some people here today that you need that too. Just because it's not wrong doesn't mean it is wise. In all of your ways, acknowledge God's wisdom. Well, it's not wrong, that I'm doing this. It's not wrong. No, I understand that. But here's the question. Is it wise considering your past? Maybe you've had a problem in your past that you've struggled with and you're making decisions now today, and you're trying to say, well, I know I kind of might have struggled with that in my past, but it's not wrong that I want to do this now. That's we're kind of missing the point, right? Like if I went to the doctor last week and they said, hey, you got some health issues, when it comes down to your eating habits or changing or whatever, and you need to make some changes. The next time that you go drive past the hot and ready sign at Krispy Kreme, you might have this dialogue in your head. Well, it's not wrong for me to eat a donut. It's not wrong. Well, I think the important thing for us to understand is that's the wrong question. Just because it's not wrong doesn't mean it is wise. Is it wise considering my past? I should be asking myself that question. Looking at my past, considering how I've spent money in the past. Is it wrong that I want to buy this car? Is it wrong that I want to spend my money on this? No, it's not necessarily wrong, but is it wise? How about this? Is it Ecclesiastes 10:2? A wise person's good sense protects them. A wise person's good sense protects them, but a fool's lack of sense leaves them vulnerable. If we're going to trust in God, we got to understand what we don't understand, but then we've also got to choose wise over right. Just because it's not wrong doesn't mean it's wise. A wise person's good sense protects them, but a fool's lack of sense leaves them vulnerable. How about this question? Is it wise considering my present situation in life? Is it wise considering my present situation in life? If you just got married or you're recently married and a job offer comes up and it's to go to another job that you're going to get paid more money, but that job requires a tremendous amount of additional travel. You're going to be away from home a lot more and you just got married. Is it wise? Well, it's not wrong that I take the job. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Understand what you don't understand. But acknowledging God in every way is understanding that I've got to ask myself, it's not about right and wrong. It's about what's wise. Is it wise in my present situation if I just got married to take a job that's going to require a lot more travel? How about this? If you just had kids, is it wise to go out and buy a sports car? It's not wrong that I want a sports car. No, but is it wise? We have a rule at North Rock with all of our staff. We call it our staff 10 commandments. We make the choice as pastors to not ride in a car alone with anybody that's from the opposite sex. Not to have any meetings that are just a personal meeting one-on-one with somebody from the opposite sex. And I've taken some heat over that. I've had people tell me, Jason, come on, really? It's not wrong that you're having a meeting. And I'm like, you're right, it's not wrong. But is it wise? Why do I want to walk? What is the thing about life that makes me want to always walk to the edge of the cliff to look over? Why can't I decide that maybe trusting God is living in the space where I'm 3 steps away? Well, yeah, I can create some distance between myself and wrong choices, right? What did the scripture say? A wise person's good sense protects them. It protects them. And a fool's lack of sense leaves them vulnerable. How about this? Is it wise considering my future? Is the decision that you're getting ready to make wise considering your future? Man, we live in a world that we mortgage our futures for the pleasure of today. I can't tell you the amount of married couples or people that have gotten themselves into difficult times when it comes down to their finances and spending or whatever the reason. That we've mortgaged our futures for the pleasure of the present. Is this decision I'm getting ready to make, is it wise considering my future? Might not be wrong, but is it wise? Very interesting question. I think we should all ask ourselves. Listen, I want to close out with this idea. 1 Corinthians 1, 18 and 19. Paul said this in observation of wisdom and how it works in the world. He said, for the message of the cross is foolishness to those that are perishing. Like people that hear the message of Jesus on the cross, that sounds like foolishness to those who it really it doesn't matter to. But to us who are being saved, it's the power of God. Like this is God's power. The cross, Jesus on the cross is the power of God. For it is written, God says, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise. I'm literally going to destroy the wisdom of the wise. I'm going to set wisdom up in a way that it's going to just be a grenade on the floor for everything that anybody who calls himself wise thinks is wise. I'm going to destroy the wisdom of the wise, the intelligence of the intelligent. I will frustrate. I'm going to frustrate that. Why? Because I want to show them their need for me. I'm going to show them they're not going to be early. They're not going to be, and they will be late. And there will be many decisions they make that are nowhere on time. And they won't consider their present. They won't consider their past. And they won't consider their future when they're making decisions. Timing is everything. There's a time and a way for every decision that we make. And as we close out the series, I just think that's so important for us to understand. Jesus on the cross is the picture of wisdom. God gave us the most perfect picture of wisdom, and that was Jesus himself. It sounds like foolishness to trust God. It sounds like foolishness that you need God in your life to help make these decisions. It sounds like foolishness that maybe God is the only one who has the time and the way. But Jesus was the perfect example of wisdom. He was the example that frustrated the wise, that the intelligent just didn't understand. They couldn't figure out that God could love me that much, that God could want good things for my life. And that in that, somehow, God could restore a relationship with me. And he could lead me down straight paths in my life. Come on, some of you today, you're struggling with this decision and you don't know what to do. And I want to encourage you today, if you want to know what's wise and you want to know when is wise, God has the timetable. And he doesn't give us the details. So he is taking us on a journey to help us understand more about these decisions. And that journey is about trusting our lives to him. Now, you're going to have to understand what you don't understand. You're going to have to not lean on your understanding to go on this journey. And you're going to have to acknowledge God in every aspect of your life. You're going to have to ask the question, is it wise considering my past? Is it wise considering my present? Is it wise considering my future? Just because it's not wrong doesn't mean it is wise. But make no mistake about it. When you and I do that, God delivers on his promises to us every time and in perfect time. Come on, some of you are struggling with a decision today. A tough decision, one you're not sure what to do with. I want to encourage you to put it in God's hands. It might sound like foolishness, but hey, maybe you've tried it your way for so long and it's just time to try it God's way. It's just time to say, we've wrestled with this thing for so long and I'm kind of done wrestling with it. So I just want to put my trust in something other than myself. Come on, if that's you today, I just invite you to bow your heads and close your eyes with me right now at all of our campuses. And in a moment, your campus pastor is going to lead you in a prayer that I believe can be the first step in this journey of trusting God with your life. But I just want to pray that God gives us the courage to take that step when that opportunity is presented to us today, that we would take the step to trust our lives to God, to trust our decisions to God, to trust the timing to God, and know that he'll meet us right at the moment that we make that decision. God, give us the courage to do that. Give us the courage with every decision that we have to make and the timing of all these things to trust you and to know that there's things that are beyond us, and that's why we need you. Help us, God, to not just look through our lives through the lens of what's right and what's wrong, but to look through the lens of, is it wise? For those that are considering making a decision today to trust their lives to you, will you make yourself real to them as their campus pastor leads them today in this opportunity to give their hearts to you? In Jesus' name we pray.